McCallum is your guide to ancient prophecies. Next.
History is filled with astonishing predictions by seers who claim to foresee future events. Among them, the Egyptians, the prophets in the Bible, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce. And all of these have at least one vision in common. The specter of an event yet to come that will change the world as we know it forever. The final judgment, Armageddon. What's more, the date and hour of this event has been repeatedly foretold. Ever since the earliest civilization, man has studied the past, lived in the present, and feared for the future. A future so elusive, so unknowable, that he has sought help in divining the secrets of time, often turning to the workaday prophets for hire, the fortune teller.
Their neon signs beckon in the night from the seedy quarters of town. Palm readers, psychics, fortune tellers peddling advice to the lovelorn and curious, promising the impossible, offering a peek into the future.
Oh, spirits from beyond, tell me more. For you I see romance, love, passion, many new friends. Heartbreak.
What if one could see the future? Would it be a blessing or a curse?
It is a very big burden on my life. Sometimes I feel that I can change the course of someone's life. I take that very serious.
In Hollywood, California, Tila is a psychic to the stars. To protect the privacy of her famous clients, she asked to be interviewed about her special gift of prophecy in silhouette.
The power is mostly premonitions, dreams, feelings. If I were to sit down quietly, I would see many things happening around the world. Sometimes I find that I can turn it off, and sometimes I can't.
On hundreds of occasions, Tila's special gift has saved her clients and some total strangers from disastrous.
I was walking one day on a very busy street and I saw a lady put a baby in her car, in the car seat. At that second, I felt that that woman was going to get hurt and the baby was going to get killed. I stopped her. I told her I'm a psychic, and please don't drive home. She didn't take my word for it. She just went on her way. And as soon as she pulled out, a car came and hit her directly in the back of her car. It wasn't very serious. She didn't get hurt. She looked at me, I looked at her, and I just walked away. Recently, I had a premonition about some kind of a ride in an amusement park, and that something was going to go wrong, and that a lot of children was going to get hurt.
Soon thereafter, at the Los Angeles Children's Park, a freak derailing of a train ride nearly killed dozens of children.
It was very frightening. And at that time, I didn't know if there was more that I could have done.
But Tila's visions often portend disasters over a much larger scale.
I was sitting down very quietly one day. When I closed my eyes, I saw a large building exploding. And I felt that it's going to be in New York City. The only thing I could think of, who can I save or what can I do? I located a client of mine, and I told her to stay away from large buildings within the next few days, because based on my experience, my premonitions only went 3 days.
Within days, according to Tila, television news showed the shocking aftermath of the terrorist bombing at the World Trade Center in New York City. But this was only one of the thousands of premonitions that have haunted Tila since her childhood.
I don't know where it comes from. I honestly can't tell you. My ancestors are from Egypt, and as far as we can trace, I am the 6th generation of psychic readers. We are only the women that have the psychic ability. And now I found that my child, my little girl, has the same ability. When my ancestors were in Egypt, they would preferably read in the pyramids. Our energies flowed through the pyramid and through our bodies.
A journey back to Egypt, the land of Tila's ancestors, the land of the pharaohs, will reveal what may be this world's most profound prophecy. Embodied in the Great Pyramid is what is purported to be a roadmap of the future that leads to a cataclysmic event at the end of this century. Rising from the desert sands of Egypt, the Great Pyramid bears silent witness to civilizations that have flowered and decayed. More than a mausoleum, it may guard the secrets of time. Author E. Raymond Capt.
It's not a pagan temple or a tomb of a pharaoh whose body never has been found. The pyramid definitely has a message for mankind. The Great Pyramid was built about 2623 BC during the reign of Khufu, second king of the 4th Egyptian dynasty. The builders came from Arabia, and they built several practice pyramids, training a workforce before they even started building the Great Pyramid. And when the Great Pyramid was built and finished, these builders left.
The monument they built may have been created for the living and not the dead.
The Great Pyramid was built disguised as a tomb. Khufu died 7.5 years after the pyramid was built, and he never intended that to be his tomb. One of the puzzling aspects of the Great Pyramid was there were no hieroglyphics found in the passage walls or ceiling or the sarcophagus. In this respect, the Great Pyramid is silent.
Silent, but not without a message. Some scholars believe encoded into the very structure of the pyramid may be mathematical and scientific knowledge of unbelievable precision that was unknown to the ancient Egyptians.
We find in the pyramid scientific features we never dreamed men had any knowledge whatsoever of in that earlier time, in 2623 BC. One of the amazing features of the Great Pyramid is built on a pi ratio. We know the Egyptians didn't have that information, and yet it's there.
Even more inconceivable, embedded within the pyramid's interior passageways and chambers may be a timeline foretelling the future. Author Richard Noon.
The ancient astronomer, stonemasons that constructed the Great Pyramid, incorporated within the structure etched in stone, a 6,000-year calendar.
Embodied in the design of the pyramid, we find three very significant dates. One of them is the birth of Christ, 1,000 years before the Bible is written, 2,000 years before Christ was even born. The pyramid is the prophecy in stone.
The secret to deciphering the Great Pyramid's prophetic calendar may lie in a simple equation. 1 inch equals 1 year.
If you start from the outside the pyramid, 2623 BC, when it was built, and start measuring forward in the passage system, allowing each inch to represent 1 year, you come to 1453 BC, when the first ascending passage starts going up. That's the date that the law was given on Mount Sinai to Moses.
Going up the calendar line a little bit further, we reach the birth of Christ. 33 1/3 inches later, we have the crucifixion. And then the whole passageway changes into a glorious architectural feat called the Grand Gallery. Then we move up, and according to the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, we enter 2 periods of tribulation. Those dates were World War I, World War II, right on the money.
Ominously, the passage rapidly leads to a room called the King's Chamber and a dead end. Some investigators fear this termination may portend the end of time.
The calendar in stone in the Great Pyramid ends on the year 55-2000. So it's certainly the ultimate disaster.
However, the Great Pyramid offers an alternate route, or stone calendar, that descends on a straight line into a subterranean chamber. If the equation holds that 1 inch equals 1 year, the year 2000 may also align with a gaping pit in the floor of the underground chamber. The prophecy of the Great Pyramid allegedly warns that the coming millennium may usher in the end time. This same prophecy reappears in the writings of 2 men who lived in Europe during the Middle Ages. One was known as the king among prophets, and the other became a saint. Over 800 years ago in Ireland lived a bishop, a healer, a seer through time, a prophet who claimed to predict the day and hour his life would end. His name was St. Malachi. His legacy? One remarkable prophecy reaching almost 1,000 years into the future. It came to him in a vision while on a pilgrimage to the holy city of the Vatican. Author John Hogue interprets Malachi's prophecy.
Upon seeing the holy city, he fell into an ecstatic trance and in short 3-word phrases predicted all the popes that would rule unto doomsday.
Malachi's prophecy, a coded list foretelling the next 112 popes, remained lost for ages inside Vatican archives. Author Dolores Cannon offers a theory.
It was many centuries later before the prophecies came to light and were brought to the public. And as they have examined them, they have all come true up to the present time.
According to some researchers, Malachi's prophecies contain an ominous warning that may come to pass in our time.
This Irish saint tells us that we only have 2 more popes after John Paul II.
2 more popes, and Malachi's list reportedly ends. About the final pope and the end of the Holy Roman Church, Malachi writes, "The city of 7 hills shall be utterly destroyed, and the awful judge will judge the people." It's been said that St. Malachi's prophecy names this last pope as the one who shall bear witness to the destruction of Rome. If Malachi is correct, his name will be Peter the Roman, the very same name given to the first pope to sit in the Vatican. 300 years after Malachi, the name Peter Romanus, or Peter the Roman, was again heralded as the final pope to perish in a terrible future time. This second warning came from a man known as the king amongst prophets, Michel de Nostradame. Michel de Nostradame was born almost 500 years ago in 1503 in Provence in the south of France. In time, it was he who would be widely described as the king amongst prophets. Nostradamus predicted what has been interpreted as the rise of Napoleon and Hitler, also the coming of the Second and Third World Wars. He may have foreseen submarines and spacecraft centuries before their arrival. In his day, the Black Plague was ravaging the land, killing all who crossed its path. Surrounded by the squalor of 16th century Europe, Nostradamus first achieved fame not as a prophet, but as a healer.
Nostradamus tells the story of entering a plague-ridden town. He came upon a woman affected by the plague, but still very much alive. She was sewing herself up in her own death shroud. Because she was fearful no one would be left alive in the town to do it for her. It was in just this environment that Nostradamus performed his medical miracles.
If Nostradamus had never predicted anything, he would be remembered as one of the great healers of the 16th century.
Tragically, Nostradamus found himself suddenly powerless when the Black Death struck his wife and child. Devastated, he wandered throughout Europe before finally remarrying and settling in Salon, France. It was here that he made some of his most amazing predictions.
Nostradamus had a very special room in his house that he used exclusively for his prophecies. It was cold and damp, dark, made entirely of stone. And there, on a large wooden table, he used various looking-in devices. He had the best results with a special black mirror. He called this his doorway to the future.
What actually transpired in his study is still a mystery centuries later. Did he have visions or hear voices from beyond? Could he have traveled through time? Two facts are certain. His main inspiration came from a book, De Mysteriis Egyptorum, The Mysteries of Egyptology. And he recorded his visions of the future in the form of quatrains, which are a kind of poem.
Nostradamus wrote his quatrains in a mixture of languages, anagrams, symbolism. He devised this code because he was living during the time of the Inquisition, when the very idea of prophecy was forbidden and considered the work of the devil.
Scholars deciphering the quatrains claim they may warn of the rise of 3 antichrists and an apocalyptic final battle before the year 2000. According to some researchers, the first antichrist was a commoner who became emperor of France. Translated, Nostradamus gives us, "An emperor will be born near Italy. He will be found less a prince than a butcher." And Nostradamus gives him a name, Pau Ne Laron, or Napalin Roi.
Napoleon was the first of 3 antichrists foreseen by Nostradamus. Each antichrist will take us a step closer to the final battle of Armageddon. Nostradamus had named all 3 of these antichrists. He called Napoleon Napalon Roy. It's an anagram, a wordplay on the name Apollyon, the angel of the abyss in the book of Revelations.
Hundreds of years further into the future, some believe Nostradamus saw the rise of a second Antichrist. In one translation, he wrote of this man, "From the deepest part of Western Europe, a child will be born to poor people, who by his speech will seduce multitude." And again, the quatrains offer a name.
Adolf Hitler was Nostradamus' second Antichrist, and the quatrains surrounding him are remarkable for one thing. Nostradamus uses the word Hister not only as an obvious wordplay on Hitler's name, but Hister was also the exact ancient word for the Danube River, on the banks of which Hitler grew up. Nostradamus goes on to describe the crooked cross that would become the recognized symbol of Nazism.
Of course, Hister's legacy is that he killed 50 million people and injured about 250 million. And in fact, Nostradamus describes the great ovens of the Holocaust.
From one translation of the quatrains, Human death through flesh is burned to ashes. Also, he may have foreseen a ghastly event that ended the Second World War. Near the harbors between two cities, there will happen two scourges, the likes of which was never seen before. John Hogue continues his interpretation.
Nostradamus describes exactly what that scourge is. The two harbors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the plague doctor of the 16th century describes a pestilence within, a strange disease that kills them, kills so many people. This is radiation.
Actually, Nostradamus wrote quite a bit about the atomic bomb. In another quatrain, he referred to the explosion as the stone in the tree, the stone representing the bomb, and the tree representing our visualization of the mushroom cloud.
Atomic radiation, the bomb, electricity, radio, submarine and air travel, all of these believed to have been foretold by a man alive in the 16th century. Strangely, much of Nostradamus' prophecy centers on our time, as if his vision of the 20th century was especially clear. In one of his most vivid quatrains, he may have prophesied the untimely death of an American president when he wrote, "The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt."
The prophecies concerning the assassination of John Kennedy are among Nostradamus' greatest. Every word of the quatrains ring true. The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt. From the roof, evil will fall on the great man.
Not only did Nostradamus appear to see JFK's assassination, he is believed to have predicted a modern-day psychic would try to warn the doomed young president. This may have been prophet and psychic Jean Dixon.
The whole assassination was revealed to me as though it were a motion picture. Just 10 days before he was leaving for Texas, I said, "I'm Jean Dixon. Go to the White House and warn the president that he must not go to Texas. If he does, he will be assassinated." And then I gave her the name of the assassin, Oswald.
A reading of Nostradamus could also have reassured President Kennedy with his wish to see an American on the moon. He will come to take himself to the corner of Luna. He will be placed on alien land. Some believe Nostradamus perceived that not all such exploration would be successful. 9 will be set apart from the human flock. Their fate will be sealed at the moment of their departure. Dolores Cannon feels this refers to the Challenger disaster.
Nostradamus actually predicted the Challenger disaster, but he went even further. He predicted that this would be the turning point in NASA's career.
Nostradamus also prophesied what until recently would have been unthinkable, a prediction that has been interpreted as an alliance between the United States and the former Soviet Union. He wrote, "The Great Wall in the East will fall. One day the great powers will become friends." Still, the peace that such an alliance implies may neither be long enough nor strong enough to ensure a peaceful world. No stranger to plagues, Nostradamus foresaw one, unlike any other, that would strike down much of the world in the last half of the last decade of the 20th century.
In fact, Nostradamus says that not only will 2/3 of the world be destroyed through this plague, he also says it will decimate the clergy of Mother Church.
But Nostradamus' unsettling visions for the 1990s only begin with a plague. He tells us that we will also witness the coming of the third Antichrist.
The third and final Antichrist is called by an enigmatic name, Mabus, M-A-B-U-S.
The information we have about the third Antichrist is that he was born on February the 4th, 1962, in Israel, in Jerusalem. But he is not a Jew, and he has been raised by an uncle who has put together a group of rich backers. These are the people who will finance his career in the taking over the world and the coming of the Third World War. But he will not make his appearance known until about 1995.
According to some interpretations, with his appearance will come great danger.
We will be plunged into a war of unspeakable horrors with atomic explosions, chemical warfare, biological warfare, laser warfare, weapons that we don't even think that could possibly exist. And this would climax to the point where the world would be starving to death, to the point that some countries would even turn to cannibalism.
But those who believe in these predictions say that even if we are able to either escape or defeat the third Antichrist, we can do neither with nature.
Nostradamus predicted 3 quatrains dealing with disasters for the United States before the 1990s were over.
It is believed Nostradamus foresaw boiling volcanoes, blistering winds, furious hurricanes, devastating earthquakes.
Nostradamus speaks of a great shifting of the globe over either 2 sudden jolts in a 6-month period or a slow roll, which will devastate and undermine entire civilizations. I believe, personally, that he is speaking of May of 2000, simply because it is a time of a grand conjunction of planets, a grand opposition of planets, which could pull gravitational forces to create such an earthquake in California.
Again, a warning for our time. Nostradamus writes, "In the year 1999 and 7 months, the great king of terror will come from the sky. He will resurrect Genghis Khan before and after war rules."
The Cold War has seen America and Russia become friends. This was predicted by Nostradamus, and it is a warning. It is the final warning before Armageddon. Russia and America's friendship will be undermined by a Middle Eastern, North African source. This will precipitate to a disastrous attack in the year 1999 in July.
My interpretation of the famous 1999 quatrain is a little different than the accepted one. Nostradamus saw that at the height of the Third World War, there would be a lot of experimental weaponry being used. And one of these was the horrible example of the cloning of armies, or the creation of war machines by the manipulation of the chromosomes to create a person who would be a murderer without any morals.
It is my opinion, after 20 years of traveling around the world and studying prophecies, that we make prophecy work by being so predictable. We repeat the past in the future. There's also a shared vision of most prophets that there's not much to say about future history after the year 2000.
Where did this power of Nostradamus originate? This vision into the future? Could it be divine? The answer may come from the mouths of children. For many who have claimed the power of prophecy, their gift is not a matter of birthright. Instead, its appearance has been linked to some life-altering event.
Fatima, Portugal, 1917. 3 children believed they were given a glimpse into the future. 9-year-old Lucia, 7-year-old Francisco, and 6-year-old Jacinta claimed visitation by a beautiful woman who entrusted them with secret messages, prophecies. Yet to have come true, one message is still outstanding, and the Pope, John, in 1970, this sleepy little community, but the impact on one of the few places
is a very strong recommendation to the camp. You can still disagree if you want to, think that it probably was true. The children first reported this to their parents. He was radiant.
In Mary appeared enslavement of nations. They also described what could have been. These dire predictions were greeted with suspicion. It most skeptical of minds were anxiously awaited the appointed day and hour.
The children were there, and this huge crowd was pressing in, and the rain was pouring down, and all of a sudden, the sun appeared. And then the crowd saw the sun begin to move and to dance in the sky, as it was described, and to fall down almost to the horizon.
The crowd was in absolute awe. There were many of the free thinkers from Spain and Portugal there who were very much against religion or anything of this nature, who immediately were convinced and fell on their knees and started repenting and asking for forgiveness for their lack of belief. It was an awesome experience, and it did show to the world that something valid had been happening at Fatima.
Despite the so-called miracle of the sun, there were still many questions as to the validity of the children's story. It would take time, but eventually even hardened disbelievers would come to rethink the events of 1917.
This is very important, to follow what happens to the children or to anyone who sees or claims to have seen the Blessed Virgin Mary. One of the best proofs of whether it was really she is whether their lives are fundamentally and forever changed.